All right, so again, first we went out to here to see the GitHub API, and then we ran something that was basically, when we first start, we're going to hard code this in, but then we will put up a little search thing that we'll be able to use later, all right? Okay, so let's start the way that we always do, in that I want you to go and create a new folder. Doesn't matter that much what you call it, but I'm going to call mine GitHub-API-React. GitHub-API.React. So there's my new folder. I'm going to open it like we always do. I'm going to right mouse click on here and go to Git Bash like we always do. And I'm going to do an npx create react app dot. Now, I may get the message again that says I've already got something running on port 3000. If I do, I'm going to use that kill command. All right, so let's see. It won't do it now. It'll build it, but when I try to run it. So, and you already know that this may take just a minute or two to get done. All right. And I'll tell you what, while we're waiting, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to go out to npmjs.com. All right. You've already seen this. You know what it is. We are going to bring in Axios in just a couple minutes. But the other thing is I want you to realize, please look up on the screen here, there is a React Bootstrap. Okay? And if we get their Bootstrap 5 components built with React. All right? And it's a little bit hinky the way that some of this stuff in here works, but we're going to use that amongst other things today. All right, don't worry about installing it or anything, because I've got it really broken down, so we'll do things pretty much in a very regimented type of way. All right? Since mine is still being built, my guess is probably so is yours. So you can see the stuff's being added as we talk, so mine looks like it's just about finished. But again, we're not in any big hurry here. So tomorrow the one that we create is going to look it's going to look, for lack of better words, cooler, whatever you want to say, because we're going to be using the movie API, all right? And we'll be able to bring up posters from different movies and stuff like that. And I think that, it'll be a little bit nicer to look at. So once it comes up, and again, I realize ours don't all get created at the same time, but I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm not even going to worry about running it right now. I'm fairly confident that if I went in there, that I'd be able to run it, and it would show me the React logo. I don't really care about that, to be honest with you. All right? And again, I think I mentioned it to you yesterday, but if you didn't hear it, I know yesterday we left at 3:45. We will today as well, because I have a doctor's appointment. Okay? All right. I know you're still waiting. Is yours up?
No.
Okay. Yours? If it's still waiting, that's fine. Yours up yet, Christopher? Not yet. Yours up, Gabriel?
Not yet.
Okay, but you said yours is there and yours is Angie. Okay, good. For those of you who finished, you can just do your npm I Axios. All right, and when Gabriel's finished, we'll just all catch back up then. Still waiting?
Yep, go ahead.
See, yours was this slow. All right. All right. All right, so, I hit enter when I did that. Evidently I did. Okay. And once that comes up, which will be in a second or so, I'm going to open up my folder in code, like we've been doing. So I'm going to clear this. I'm not going to worry about running this right now, so I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to open this folder here up in code, my GitHub API React. All right, you don't have to do this, but again, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, so I'm going to go into my index.html file just because I don't like all these comments, so I'm going to get rid of the comments that are here. So that should be the last time I need to do anything with index.html, so I'm going to save that and quit. As far as the stuff that's in our source folder, kind of like yesterday, all right, I'm not going to, I'll leave the CSS file. I'm going to leave the app.js file. I don't need this app test file, so I'm going to delete it. I don't need the logo.svg file, so I'm going to delete it. I don't need the report web vitals, so I'm going to delete it. And I don't need the setup tests, so I'm going to delete it. You probably already know this then, but right now it would give me some errors, so if I go into app.js, I want to remove this line that says import logo because we don't have that anymore. All right. I'm not really doing much with CSS, but I'm just going to leave that in here. Okay? And kind of like we did yesterday, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get rid of basically everything that's in here. So let me close this div tag. All right, so that's all I've got in there right now. And again, I could put the test in there, just put an H1 or something. I don't really care. I'm just going to take for granted that it's going to work now. All right, but what I want, because I mentioned this to you, is I want this that we're doing right now, I want this to be a class-based app instead of a function-based. You know how we do this already, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say import React, comma, component from React, okay? And then I'm going to come in here after I do that, and instead of function, I'm going to use the word class, which is going to give me some errors, so I'm going to remove the parens here. All right, and this return has to be inside of a render. All right, so in other words, when it gets done, it should pretty much look like this. Okay? And we're not even going to put that much in here. We're only going to put another line or two in this file. All right? Most of the stuff we're going to do, we're going to add a new file in just a second. All right, so I'm going to save this, and hopefully everybody has it. Okay? And in my index.js, again, same kind of thing. I no longer need this import report web vitals, so I can get rid of that. I'm not going to use the strict mode. All right, I need a comma here. And I don't need any of this stuff. So you can see how I slimmed it down, so to speak. I mean, if you really want to, you could get rid of the CSS files too, because I'm not really doing much with them, but just keep them in case you want to do something with them. So again, this is my index.js, and you can see it's down to nine lines. This is my app.js, and it's down to 13 lines. All right? Okay, so most of the work we're going to do, we're going to put into a new file. So in your source folder right here, all right, I'm going to go and click New File, and I'm going to call this what it is, which is github.js. All right, this is going to be another class-based component. GitHub, just the way you typically spell GitHub, with a capital G and a capital H, everything else lowercase .js.
This is in our source file?
This is
And
in the
it's a
source
new
folder.
file.
It's in the source folder, and you have to make a new file in the source folder.
Okay. Okay.
All right. And just like we did previously, I'm going to import both React and component from React. And remember, we just brought in Axios, so I'm going to import Axios from Axios. Whoops, Axios. And you know as well as I do now, the gray stuff is all going to go away, so I'm not worried about it. Now, there's two. I'm going to switch back for a second to app.js because there's really only about 2 lines we have to put in here. You should by now know what they are. The first is we've got to come in here and we've got to import GitHub from /GitHub. That's the first thing. All right, right here, the new line 3. Plus, in here, all we're going to put in here, at least for now, is just GitHub, like that. So I put in a new line 3, and I put in a new line 9 right now. Other than that, okay, it's the same slimmed down file I'd shown you previously. Now there's 15 lines approximately in here. All right, questions? So I'm going to save this. All right, and I don't think I'm going to need it anymore, but I'm just going to keep it over here and start putting stuff into here. Now, again, we're making this a class-based component, so it's going to be class GitHub extends component. All right, our curly. And you know, right now it wouldn't work because we do need a render method in here. All right, but remember, since it's a class, we're not really in here. We're just putting in the render, but we could literally put a constructor in here. There's nothing we have to do because typically with your constructor, what you do is you initialize your state. Well, we don't have any state in the app one. We'll have some state in here in just a couple of minutes. All right, so we are going to come in and put in a constructor. All right, and just 2 lines in it for right now. So super, you've already seen that. and we're about to write a routine. So if I get an error on this, we're going to write the routine right under it. Okay, but I'm going to put in here right now, this dot get GitHub data. And for now, I'm just going to hard code mine in there. See what I'm saying? If you don't want to do that, let's say you don't want to do that. All right, you can just put, you could put in handle, your GitHub handle, so to speak. You can put that in. That's going to be fine. All right. And that's our whole constructor. Now, we are going to make modifications to this, just so you know. We're going to make modifications to this as we go on. All right? Not major modifications, but a little bit. Okay. So, I'm going to write this, get GitHub. So I'm going to bring this whole thing right here, copy it, and put it right down there. All right? And this is the function to get the data. All right? So I'm going to use Axios .get. Now, you may or may not remember this, but I showed you this a little bit earlier. All right? And what I want to put in here is a couple things. All right? Let me make it a little bit smaller because otherwise it's going to kind of flow off the screen here. So let me try making it 40. All right? So I want to put this as https://api.github.com/search/users, but where it's got the Q equals, I don't want that to be hard coded like that. I want to do this and then just say plus handle. So this is what we're going to use inside of Axios right there. I'll leave it right there. So if you want to copy it, that's great. In fact, let's see. It's going to have to be, the whole thing's going to have to be in double quotes. So like that. All right. Make sure that plus handle is not in double quotes. Does everybody have that? Okay. So I'm going to put that in here, just like that. All right. Now, I'm thinking this probably is, right here, this probably is going to give us an error, so I am going to put my name in there. You can put yours in there as well. So I am going to put, for now, JP Scott Rankin. You can put mine in there. It doesn't matter. We're going to change it fairly quickly anyway. All right. So what are we doing? We're telling it what the constructor ideally does is it's a lightweight component that doesn't do any more than initialize. It calls its super, and then it initializes state. But we're not initializing state right now. We are going to end up pulling this out of here because it's not considered a good idea for the constructor in a React program to be calling a lot of other routines. All right? And don't worry about it. With what we've got in here right now, it's totally fine. All right. When we call this, we get returned a promise. And you remember, a promise can be in one of three states. If nothing has happened, if the promise hasn't been acted on yet, the promise is known as being in a pending state. If the promise has been acted on and it was successful, it's in a resolved state. And if it was acted upon and it was unsuccessful, all right, it's in what's called a rejected state. All right? So I'm going to come to the end of this line like we are right here. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to put .then. And what you call this is up to you. I just called it res, basically, like that. All right? And then we're going to come in here, and all we're going to do for right now, all we're going to attempt to do, we're going to run this in just a second, and hopefully it's going to give us our data. But we're only going to console.log it. We're not going to worry about prettying it up or doing anything to it yet. So I'm just going to say here, console.log, and then in the parens, res.data.items, just like that. Remember, this is our callback. All right? So we are calling this, and we're telling the system once this gives us our data back, call this. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Now we can put a semicolon here. Probably is a good idea. Again, you should just worry about being consistent more than anything else. All right. Okay. Now, there's a couple more things that we have to put in here. You should know this already. We need a render. All right? So I'm going to put a render in right here. Okay? And it's going to have in it what we want to return. So I'm going to put a return in here. All right? And, well, typically, again, you put it in a div. All right? So I'm going to, for now, I'll just put it in H2. And I'm going to say loading data ... You don't like that? You can really put in just about anything you want. All right? Finally, the last thing we have to do when we write a class like this is export it. So export default GitHub. All right? Now that we have exported it right here, that import that we put in here is not grayed out anymore. All right, so taking the whole thing from the top, we came in here and we imported React and component from React. We imported Axios from Axios. We made this a class-based component, so we needed a constructor. The constructor had to call super, which is the constructor of the parent. So in other words, this is calling the constructor of this. All right? Then we are calling this .get GitHub data, which is that routine is this routine. The handle I'm passing it is my GitHub handle. Then we're saying Axios.get, we're calling it that, but notice what we're doing in here is we're basically appending onto here for that Q equals. This is as though I came in here and wrote Q equals JP Scott Rankin. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. And then we're just telling it to console log it. You won't be able to see it unless you bring up your console log. All right? So that's everything that we're doing pre-rendering right there. Then to render, we're putting in here, we're just going to put this in, loading data. All right? And then when we're all done, we exported it. I don't think we have to go over the index because we've already talked about it. And I don't think we have to go over the app. You do have to make sure that this GitHub that's right here, just like this, is the same caseness, etc., as this GitHub and as this GitHub. That should by now hopefully make sense to everyone. All right? So I think they've all been saved, but I'm going to come in anyway and do a file save on each one of these. So there's my file save on my app.js. There's my file save on my index.js. And there is my file save on my github.js. All right? Now I'm going to come back into here, and I'm going to do my npm start.
Before you do that, never change the second handle to your...
Which one? The one in here?
11.
I don't want to change this one.
You don't want to change that one?
No, this is what I'm passing in. So in other words, this I could change at any time. I could put Gabriel Breeding in there, and then this would become Gabriel Breeding, and so would this.
Oh, okay.
This is just a parameter that I'm passing into to that. For later, we won't be hard coding it anymore. All right, but for now we are. Okay? All right. So I'm going to come in here and do my npm start. And I get the end, something is already running. So I'm going to do npm, what was it? Is it kill port? I don't remember. Anybody have it? I've got it, but not in my notes right here.
npx kill -port 3000.
npx kill -port 3000. So if you get that something is already running on port 3000, you can put that command in as well. Thank you. All right. So there it came back, clear. Try running it again. No. Well, I hit the wrong command, but that's okay. Clear, and now run my npm start. And I should at least not get that message. Now, it's totally possible I typed in something wrong. All right? So I always like to go back here and check. It says component is defined but never used. All right, plus I'm looking in here, it's giving me a type error. It says class constructor app cannot be invoked without new. That isn't true. I did it before. The program worked just fine. I've got the whole working program already, so what don't I have here? I'm going to look. Yep. Close, run it. Yeah, no, this works. Oh, yeah. Worst case, I'll go and bring up the working one already. I don't want to do that, but I will. Super, this data, that's correct. All correct. All right, I think I'm missing something in app.js, so please open that up. Okay, so we've got this, we've got this, we've got this.
What was the error you got?
It said that I couldn't call this without doing new. Oh, I never extended component here. Extends component. That's what the problem is. All right. Wasn't the first mistake I made, and it won't be the last one. So, ideally now, when we come back to here, there's the message, compiling successfully. All right? Now, when I go look at it, so when I bring up my, right here, you get nothing but loading data. All right? That's okay. Because we want to right mouse click on here now and choose inspect, and then please go over to your console. And you should get something that looks like this when you do that. If you click where it says array here, all right, there's my information. So this is all the stuff that you can end up printing out if you want to. We're only going to print out 3 or 4 of these fields, but you can see, I don't know how many there are in there, but there's a lot of them. All right? All right, so that's all fine. All right, and I'm gonna show you something right now, okay? And for right now, I'm just gonna stop, close that. That's fine. All right. Now, the program works. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It wouldn't be a very viable program because you need to run it and open up the inspector, etc., to see it. But the point is, at least, is that right now it does run, okay? And that's a good start. All right, but I do want you to understand something. I said this to you before, and I want to say it again, and that is this, that by default, when you write something like this and you put in a constructor, the constructor should be as lightweight as possible, all right? And what does that mean? That means it shouldn't be really calling a lot of routines. The only thing that should be being done in the constructor is the call to super, which is mandatory, and later we're going to add some state. Not right now, all right, but we will do that later. So just to show you that we can use other routines and whatever, let's come down here, and it doesn't matter if we do it before or after this. I'm just going to put it right after my constructor here. And I'm going to type in, you remember we talked a little bit about state when we were watching the other day, and there was a thing in there that was called component did mount, just like that. So I'm going to call component did mount, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this line that I've got right here, that line, and I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to paste it in there. Just like that. All right? And if everything works okay, the program still works exactly as it did before. All right, so I'm going to come in here and do a file save. I'm going to look in here, and it says useless constructor. All right, so it's giving me that warning. Basically, it's telling me that all it's doing is it's just calling super. That's okay. All right, I would consider that to be an acceptable warning. All right, and if I go back to here again, and I bring this back up, so I bring up my localhost :3000 again. It again just says loading data, and again, if I go and inspect, just like before, if I go over to console, there's my array, and there's my information. So nothing changed. All right? Okay.
So that better or worse?
No, that's considered better, just because you shouldn't be calling a lot of different routines from the constructor. The constructor should be calling super, and it should be basically initializing your state variables, and it shouldn't be doing anything else. All right? All right. Now, part of the problem, we're going to do something right now, and what I mean is, well, first of all, that's not a great message. We really only want it to say loading data when it's truly loading data. All right? And most of the time when you go and you put something in, you're going to get data back almost like this. But you don't know. All right? If literally, I don't know how many Jeffs are out there. For example, later we're going to search for, I'll put Jeff in there. All right? Or if I put in John Smith or whatever, sometimes it might take quite a bit of time for all of that data to load. All right? You just don't know. It could take a couple milliseconds. It could take 10,000 milliseconds, which means 10 seconds. Especially if you put in something that was real close, but there wasn't an exact match, and it was looking and looking and looking and looking through everything until it found out that it couldn't find anything. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to add some state. What do I mean? Well, come back here, and let's go back into our constructor that's right here. All right? And we're going to add this. No pun intended. This dot state equal, and again, it's not mandatory that you break it up over lines like this, but it's a common thing. All right? And when we first start, is loading is going to be equal to true. You say, well, what is loading? It's a variable that I just made up. All right? And it's a and I'm sorry, it's not equal. It's colon. So we are creating a brand new variable, and we are initializing it to true. I do want you to understand this is a JSON object. All right? We could add anything in there we wanted. As of right now, the only thing that's in there is loading. But we could put all sorts of stuff in there if we wanted to do that. All right. Now, what we don't want is is loading to be true forever. Does that make sense? I mean, eventually it's loaded, right? All right. Well, guess what? We know when it's been loaded. So I'm going to leave this in blue for a second, but look down here. If I've been able to console log it out, it's been loaded. Does that make sense? All right. So down here, I'm going to come in and say, is loading equal false? So we set it to true. We initialized it to true in the constructor. After the stuff has been loaded, we set it to false. And you'll notice when you're setting state, you're using a colon. But when you're actually changing it in a different routine like this, all right, now, technically, putting it in that way, all right, although it probably would work, isn't considered the best way of doing it, just so you know. All right, what we really should do is we should come in and say this dot set state. All right, and then parenthesis this. Remember, there could be a bunch of different things that we're resetting the state for. There could be potentially a bunch of them. So we set it to true, and don't put that semicolon in there, it doesn't like that. We set it to true in the constructor. we set it to false after we know it's been loaded. All right? Now, I have already done it the other way, where what I showed you before, where I just said is loading equal false. And guess what? It's worked, and then all of a sudden later on in the program, it doesn't work anymore because you're doing something that technically is incorrect. All right? I couldn't even give you a good analogy. All right? But this is the right way to do it. All right? Now, that's all fine and dandy, except for one thing. When you look right here, this is all that's going to render. It's not a terrible message. You know, it's actually, there's nothing wrong with it. It's saying what it's doing. All right? But the user may or may not even notice that. All right? So what we can do, and I'm going to show you this in just a second, is what we can do is we can come in and we can put an icon in there. Now, we could go out to Google Images and search for an icon, and that would work just fine. We could do that. However, as you may or may not have guessed, if I go back out again here to npmjs.com, all right, if I go back out here again and search for a package, there is a package called React-Loading. React-Loading. It says, easy to use loading animations for React projects. Uses SVG animations from Brent Jackson's loading projects. SVG means that basically it's drawing it as a series of lines. It's scalar vector graphics, and it means it automatically scales. All right, so whether it's on a phone or whatever, it always should look pretty nice. Okay? All right, so how do we bring that into the program? Well, there it is, npm I React loading. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to come back in here. The program is still running, but I'm going to stop the run. I think that you should get used to stopping the run anytime you're about to come in and install something or uninstall something. So I just copied it, so there it is, npm I React loading. All right, and hit enter. And it'll take just a few seconds like it usually does. Okay, and I'm going to clear. I'm not even going to worry about running it again right now. I just want to get back to the program. All right, so I am going to get back to the program. And in my GitHub file right here, to bring it in, I'm going to have to bring in something in here. So I'm going to import. It doesn't matter what we call it, but I'm just going to call it, since it starts with React, I'll capitalize that. Import React loading from React loading. And you'll notice again it's grayed out. You should notice our other stuff is not grayed out because we are now using it. All right? So we want to go down to where we've got this thing, this loading data, and we want to replace that with our actual image. Does everything I just said make sense to everybody? All right? So we just brought this in, import React loading from React loading, okay? And now I'm coming down here, and I want to remove this. If you want, you can comment it out, all right, but I'm just going to leave it there. So I'm going to come in here, and we really don't even need to make this an H2. All right, we can come in here and say React loading, type equals, and there's a bunch of types. You got to go back to the documentation to see those. Spinning, you know, whatever. There's a lot of different things. And the one that I chose was spinning bubbles. And you typically give it a color. Of course, you typically will spell color right. Like that. All right. And this is a self-closing tag. So that's what's in there. Now, chances are pretty good you're almost never going to see this, because when you go and ask for something, you're going to get an answer back pretty fast. But originally, when we did this, what we would be getting back originally, all right, what we would be getting back would be that message that said loading data, all right? And now we should be getting these spinning bubbles if everything works the way that it's supposed to work. All right, I'm going to do a file save. I don't even know if it's going to work right now yet because there's still more code that we have to add. But I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to do my npm start. Again, I could get an error message here. I don't remember. I didn't run it over at this time before. So, see the bubbles? There's other things that you can use as well, all right? And there's other colors that, you can make them a different color if you want to do that, so, make it the same color as your website or whatever. But you all understand what's happening? Now, if you think that's really irritating, I'd rather have it say loading data, you could change it back. All right, there's nothing wrong with it being there. There's nothing wrong with getting rid of it. All right, I just wanted to show you a way that you could bring stuff in. Now, one thing I mentioned to you yesterday, when we go and look in here, I'm going to bring this back up, is if you remember when we did the Chuck Norris thing yesterday, and we brought in the Chuck Norris image, we brought it and put it in our source, okay? And that's right, but let's say we had a whole bunch of things we wanted to put in here. We could just bring them in piecemeal one at a time, but it's totally legit in your source folder to put in an images folder. And then you could bring it in. But if you did that, then up here, we'd have to say from /images/. Does that make sense? You'd have to give it the right path all the time. And that's a very easy way to have stuff not work, is to just give it the wrong path. All right? All right, we're going to do one more thing, and then we will take a break. All right, because we're actually a lot even farther ahead than I thought we were. Okay, let's go back. I'm going to close that part out. And let's go back into here, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. But we're going to add one more thing. And that's going to be the data that we want to have come out. All right? You can call it anything you want, but I'm going to call it data. Now, since I'm adding another thing to state, I need to put a comma at the end here after true, and then data. And what we're doing here is we're giving it an initial value. You already saw this before. You saw all those fields that were in there, right? All that different stuff that we could get. I'm just going to say that it's an empty array. And that's all that is right now. All right? Now, that's all fine and dandy, but well, we've got is loading true here, and then we're resetting it here. All right. Well, don't we want to also reset this sometime? I think so. So what we will do is we will come down here, and it doesn't matter if you do it above or below. All right, but I'm going to come down here into my GitHub data, get GitHub data, and I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to say data. The result that we did before, .data, .items. And notice I'm getting an error. You should already be able to figure out why I'm getting an error. That is, I didn't put a comma there. And now the error goes away. Right? Again, I'm showing you, not even exactly purposely, but I'm showing you just how simple it is, all right, for you to miss one thing and have it screw up your program. All right? Let's do one more thing quickly, then we're taking a break. All right? And that is, let's come back again. I sort of showed you this before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my run, clear the screen, and I'm going to do one more install here. So I'm going to do an npm I react-bootstrap. So I'm installing the React Bootstrap. The good news about the React Bootstrap is when I looked at the documentation, it said it was for Bootstrap 5. So it's the latest and greatest. All right, I'm sure they probably have versions for older things in there. All right. So I'm going to put that in. And I'm going to clear. I'm not even going to worry right now about running it again. Okay? All right, we will in just a minute. Now, yesterday, I wasn't sure when I came in here whether or not it was giving me a weird error like it didn't understand Axios. So I immediately went back to here and I installed it again. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Even if it's installed, it just installs it over itself. But really what I should have done was I should have come in here and I should have just brought up package.json. And I should have looked in here. So if you do that, you don't have to, but if you do, what you should notice is this is what we've added today. We added Axios. We added React Bootstrap. All right. We actually could uninstall our Web Vitals right now if we wanted to. All right. But just so you got some kind of an idea, you get the React DOM and you get the React scripts and the Web Vitals by default. We also got the React loading because we installed that. All right. And all I'm just trying to do is, again, is make sure that if you're not sure if something is there or not there, you know exactly where to go look for it. All right, it is 1:18. Let's come back. I'm going to make it 15 minutes, so let's please come back at 1:33. All right, we'll just pick it up from there.